Hello everyone! Today, in honor of Kingdom Hearts coming out, we're going to be taking a look at how to create their iconic curved health bar inside of the Unity game engine. Taking aspects of games that you like and then trying to figure out how they were done is often a really great way for developers to learn and to build their skill set. Now, while playing Kingdom Hearts 3, you'll notice that the health bar is built in such a way that you start off where it curves, and then at a certain point it starts straightening out. Now here, I've got a finished example of what we're going to build today, and you'll see that if I increase the variable for my current health, it's going to increase the size of the bar, and when I move to the left, I can decrease it. Now, we're just going to be talking about the curved health bar today, but these same principles that we're going to be talking about can be used to build all of the other aspects of the UI. We're going to jump into Unity in order to actually build this project. I'm going to use the latest version, which at the time of this recording is 2018.3.3 F1, but everything that I talk about is probably going to work very similarly in future versions of the engine. I'm just going to go ahead and give my project a name. Let's just say KH Health Bar Example. And template, doesn't really matter which one you pick. We'll just go ahead and go 3D since Kingdom Hearts is a 3D game. Okay, so Unity's booted up now. And the main thing that makes this whole tutorial possible is Unity's UI system has a lot of cool functionality that can be used inside of it. And if I go ahead and create a UI image by going to Game Object UI Image, you'll see that we have these three objects being created: the canvas, which is kind of the holder of all of our UI elements; the event system, which kind of figures out how should you react to different things with different UI elements, like with different buttons moving up, down, left, right, etc. The image object itself here. And just because UI is typically done in 2D space, I'm going to click on the 2D button here to go into 2D view. And on the image itself, you'll see that right now there's no source image, but let's just add in a sprite real quick, like for instance this knob, which is kind of like a circle. And you'll see that there's this property here called image type. Now, image type of simple, pretty simple, just displays an image. But this cool one here is called filled. And filled has different methods in which you can fill objects, but see this fill amount, which is currently set to 1? If I move that down, you'll see that it kind of cuts a piece of the image away from where we're going from. And for those of you who've played Kingdom Hearts, you kind of maybe already see where I'm going with this, right? I can have a health bar with a smaller value and then move over as time goes on. Now, in our case, the image actually starts from the left side here and then moves around. And we can actually set that inside of Unity as well with a section here called the fill origin, which is where should the filling start from. And if I select the left here, you'll see that if I go to 0, it shows up like this. As I move forward, it goes on. But you'll see that again, with Kingdom Hearts, the bar doesn't go for a circle for the entirety of the image. So we're actually going to solve this as two separate pieces, with the first piece being this section and the second being the inside. So I prepared some sprites for us ahead of time. I've got myself a background image to make it easy to see between the background, make sure the UI works correctly. I also have this base layer here for the entire health bar. I have a character image, just like in Kingdom Hearts, so you can see who your player is. And then we have these two health bar images, the filled images. The circle, which is used for the first portion here, and then we have the bar, which is going to continue the rest of the UI. So we're going to go ahead and just bring this into our Unity project. I'm going to go ahead and go into project here. I'm going to right click, select create folder. I'm going to type in Sprites, because it's always a good idea to organize our projects. And I'm going to open up the folder and add the sprites into here. And inside Unity, all you have to really do is grab the files and then drag them in. Now, in this case here, you'll see that by default, because I'm in 3D mode, this is set to a texture type of default. We're going to want to change that. So if you select all 4 of these images, go to texture type and then select Sprite, 2D and UI, and then under here, hit apply. And this makes it so that these images are going to be usable within Unity's UI system. I'm going to also do the same exact thing for the background, just in case we use it as well. So I'm going to go select it, hit apply. Perfect. So let me go ahead and go to this image here. And instead of using the filled version right now, I'm going to go ahead and select this as simple. And I'm going to change the image to instead use this base health bar. I'm going to drag it out, replace knob, let go, and here it is. Now you'll see it's a little funky looking, but there's a button here called Set Native Size, and this will change this so it's actually following the 333 by 124 that the actual image is. And another thing to point out is right now if you go to the Game tab, you'll see we can only see a small sliver of what the UI itself actually is. If you look at the canvas, you'll see that this whole thing here, that is the screen. So if I put something inside of that, that means we're actually going to see it. But if we change the size of our screen, it's going to change the size of the Game tab as well, as long as I change the aspect ratio to free aspect. And it's always a good idea to try to update your UI elements to reflect where they are on the screen. The quick and easy way to do this is through this menu right here, which is called the Anchor Presets menu. All you really have to do at this point is click the button, hold down the Shift and Alt keys, and then select where you want this to be in the world. So if I want the top left, I click here, top right, middle, but in our case in Kingdom Hearts, it's positioned on the bottom right. And you'll see that now, if I go to the Game tab, we can see it exactly where it is, no matter what the aspect ratio is, which is great. So it works no matter where we're going. But you'll see it's kind of hugging the screen right now. I probably don't want that. So I'm going to go ahead and change the pose X here to maybe -10 and the pose Y to +10, which puts it 10 pixels above and 10 pixels to the left. And so after that, we've got this base bar, but I also want to add in these other bars. And so I can just create new images to place here. So I'm in the Scene tab, and one thing I'm just going to do real quick is I'm going to create a new image. I could again go to Game Object, UI, Image, and that will perfectly work. But I can also, I'll delete this by hitting the delete key. I can also hit Control D, and that'll duplicate the exact same image, including the exact same position. And I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop this bar, the slider bar, right here. Now again, you'll see it's stretchy because it's using the same width and height as the actual image, but if I hit Set Native Size, there we go. And because the position's already aligned and it's right aligned, it already perfectly fits my my actual image, which is great. So that's good. And now for the last portion, this bottom bar. I need another bar image, so I'm just going to duplicate this guy again, change the image to this side, set native size, and this time I'm going to need to shift it over a bit. So I'm going to shift it so it fits over here. And if I look at the Game tab, this will give me a better idea of what it visually looks like here. And I think that'll work for us. Inside Unity, if you move your mouse over a variable name, you'll see how there's two little arrows on the sides. that allows you to click and hold and modify the values. Now, it's always a good idea to name your objects. So this image here, I'm going to rename it to base. Hit enter. It updates the name. Here, I'm going to call this the circle bar. So circle bar. Beautiful. And then I'm going to name this the extra bar, as it's that extra part that gets added on after you finish the other images. One other thing I want to do here is we're going to add in the character as well. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate the circle bar, and then I'm going to drag and drop this guy in. Now, one thing I want to point out is that with the canvas, the order of these objects matters. So if I move this character, like let me just change the name to character here. If I move the character above base, you'll see that it's behind the base layer and everything else inside of the object. This is drawn from bottom to top. So our character, we want to be on the top here because we want the head to show up just like inside of Kingdom Hearts. Now that we've got this base part done, let's actually build it so that we can actually modify it. So we saw earlier with the circle bar, right? We can change the image type from simple to filled, and the fill amount will allow me to change the size. And again, remember that we set the fill origin to left, and that's why it's starting from here. And if we go 0 to 0.5, it'll go halfway along the circle. And 0.75 is actually where the end of this image is, because it's 3/4 of the whole thing. So I know that if this value is going to be higher than 0.75, I'm going to want to use the bar for the rest of the content. So I'm just going to go ahead right now and change the fill amount to 0 so we can make sure that it works okay right now. And we're going to do the same exact thing for the extra bar. We're going to change the image type from simple to filled. But this time we're going to change the fill method from radial, which again looks like this, right? Not what we want, to instead be horizontal. And you'll see that it goes from left to right here. But if I change the fill origin from to right, you'll see that now it's going to come off from the end. And so at this point, we're going to basically say with the circle, if we fill this up to 75, we're good to go. But if it's higher than 0.75, we need to use the rest of it to fill this extra bar. Alright, so now that we have it functionally working inside of here, we now need to actually implement the ability to display this. And to do that, we're going to need to write some code. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new script. So I'm going to first create a folder to hold my scripts, and I'm going to call it scripts. And then I'm going to right-click, create C# script, and I'm going to name this KH Healthbar. And with that, we're going to double-click on this, and it's going to open up Visual Studio. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to figure out what pieces of information do we need, or what are our variables going to be? Well, first of all, we're going to need a reference to both the circle bar and the extra bar. And that is of type image, right? The image component. And the image component is actually located inside the UnityEngine.UI namespace. So I could write, public UnityEngine.UI.image, but to save typing spaces, I'm going to go ahead and say using UnityEngine.UI, and then underneath here, I'm going to go ahead and add in my two variables. So public image, and then circle bar, and then public image extra bar. Now, okay, that's cool, but we also need to know what is the maximum health we're going to have, and the current health we want to have. So that way we have an idea of how much of the bars should we fill. So I'm going to go ahead and just make those public variables for right now, and I'm going to make them both floating point values, so we can adjust them as finely as we want to. And I'm going to go ahead and say current health, and we'll just set it to 0 for right now. And then I'm going to create another public float called max health, and then I'm going to go ahead and set to 100. So that way we have, a good range from where we can work with here. So we're not going to be using the start function here, so I'm just going to go ahead and get rid of it. And let's use the update for right now to figure out how to modify the fill on these bars here. So the bars can be modified by using circle bar or extra bar dot, and there's a property here called fill amount, which is a value of how much this object should be filled. Now with the circle bar and the extra bar, it's a value between 0 and 1. So 0 would be don't draw anything at all, and 1 would be fill the entire thing up. So if I say circle bar dot fill amount is equal to, and I provide a 0.5 here, so 0.5f, and I'm going to go ahead and save the script, and if we run the game, we should see this change. So I'm going to dive back into Unity here, and I need to attach this to a game object. Now, as you can see here, our canvas is kind of a container for all of these objects, but all these objects are all part of one thing, one group, right? So I'm going to take the base object here, and I'm going to rename it to be Healthbar. And this is going to be a holder for all of the parts of my Healthbar. And I'm going to just go ahead and drag and drop circle bar onto Healthbar to make it a child of this base object. Same thing with extra bar. I'm going to put it here, and then same with character. Alright, so why did I do that? Well, organization purposes, right? It's a lot easier to go through our hierarchy this way. I'm going to add this component to my health bar, and to do that, I'm just going to drag and drop this down here, and you'll see we've got a couple different properties, right? We got the circle bar, the extra bar, etc., etc. I'm going to drag and drop the circle bar into circle bar, extra bar into extra bar. I hit play. All right, groovy. Now the circle bar is filled now to 0.5. And again, that's something that I should point out, right? Is that the fill amount with this circle here, let me turn off the game so we can see, if I go higher than 0.75, we're not going to see any changes, right? 0.75, then it stops. That's going to be important for us to consider later on. Let's dive back into code here. So we don't necessarily want to just always show 0.5. We want to show a percentage of our health. And we can get that percentage by dividing current health by max health. So I'm going to just create a new variable to make it just as easy as possible for us to know what each part is. And I'm going to say float health percentage is equal to current health divided by max health. And I'm going to change health percentage here. I'm going to change it so that health percentage is here. I'm going to save the script again. And now, when we play the game, you'll see that based off the value, like if I go here and I increase the value of current health, you'll see the bar is starting to increase in size. Now, you'll see that it looks like when current health is 75, which is 0.75, it's going to stop displaying. Now, it's really still displaying, right? The fill amount's just the value divided by 100. But we want to have it continue along here. Also, this bar, we don't want 75% of the bar to be this part, right? We want it to be much less, right? The circle only takes a small percentage of what the whole bar is. So that's also something that we're going to need to take into consideration. So we now need to figure out how much of the entire health bar is the circular part. We need to know what this circle percentage is. So I'm going to create a new floating point value, which I'm going to just call public float. I'm going to call it circle percentage. And for right now, let's just say 0.3 here. And this variable is basically how much of the whole health bar is the circular part. And basically, what I'm going to do is this fill amount is not going to just be the health percentage. It's going to be relative to the entire bar, how much should I show here. And the way that we can do this is I'm just going to create a new variable, which I'm going to call circle fill, which will be the fill amount for the circle. And I'm going to set it equal to health percentage I'm going to set it equal to health percentage divided by the circle percentage. And I'm going to change this so that instead of just health percentage here, it's going to be circle fill. All right, cool. So now let's go ahead and dive in to see what this looks like. So with my bar here, you'll see that if I increase current health, it's now, when I get to 20 something, it looks like it gets to the end point of drawing here. And that's because what we've done effectively is change it so that whenever current health is 30, the circle bar has a fill amount of 1. And that's kind of what we want, right? We want, when it's 30%, we want this to fill all the way. But here's the thing. Remember that this only goes to 0.75, and then it's nothing to us, right? So I need to instead make it so that this 30 is actually 0.75 instead of 1. And so in order to do that, I'm going to create yet another variable, which I'm going to call, not public, we want it to be private, and I'm going to go ahead and call this a circle fill amount, and I'm going to set that equal to 0.75, because again, that's how much of the circular part is going to be used in the health bar. Now, this variable we don't need to tweak. We know the value, it's never going to change. So this would be a good place for me to, instead of just being private, also adding another tag, which is const. And const stands for constant, which means it won't ever change. And again, it's always a good idea to comment our code here. So I'm going to say how much of the circular part is used in the health bar. And again, once we have this, I'm just going to take the value of circle fill and multiply it by this fill amount. So I'm going to say circle fill times equals circle fill amount. All right, cool. So with this in mind, when we play the game, when I go on my health bar here, you'll see that if I increase the value to 30, there it is, right? It gets all the way to the end of this image. Now, if I were to change the circle percentage here, like if I change it to 0.75, you'll see that it makes it so you have to go a lot further before you reach the end of this particular image. 0.3, I think, works okay for us right now. But now we need to think about how we're going to go ahead and draw this extra bar portion. But as you can see right now, this update function basically takes care of drawing the circle, or giving us the circle fill. Now we could have this function all inside of update, and we could add all the extra portion there too, but I think it's a good idea to get into the habit of creating functions to describe what certain smaller pieces of things do. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, Control C, delete it, and I'm going to create a new function, void, and I'm going to call it circle fill. And all I'm going to do is inside here, paste this, and then call the circle fill function here. And that just makes it so that it's a little easier for us to see when we look at the code exactly what this is doing. Now, once we have this, now we need to think about the extra portion, that extra bar part, right? And so I'm going to create another function, which I'm going to call extra fill. So just like circle fill, we have extra fill. And we're going to go ahead and say void extra fill. And again, for this portion, again, it's the same basic concept as before. We want to use extra bar dot fill amount, and we want to set it to some value, which I guess I'll just call extra fill to fit in the same kind of thing that we did here, right, with circle fill. And I'm just going to create a float extra fill. But now we need to think about how do we actually set this value. Well, the idea is basically the health over the total health, just like this, except we need to remove the portion that was used inside of the circle fill. So we need to figure out first how much of the bar is taken away by the circle bar. And so I'm just going to create a new float, which I'm going to call circle amount, and that's going to be equal to the percentage of the circle, right, that's being used times by our max health. So again, circle percentage is how much of the whole health bar is the circular part, and then we're going to multiply that by the max health. So in our case, 0.3 times our max health, which is 100, it's going to be 30. So that value, 30%, is what's being used up here. So circle amount is equal to circle percentage times max health. Beautiful. Now that we have this circle amount, we can remove that from both the current health and the max health to get this final extra fill. So I'm going to create, again, two more variables. So float the extra health, so how much health is left on the extra section. I'm going to set it equal to current health minus that max health value, right? Oh, sorry, circle amount value. Amount. Beautiful. And then float extra total health is going to be max health minus the circle amount. And then finally, we're going to divide them against each other. So I'm going to say extra fill is equal to extra health divided by extra total health. And so at this point, if we go ahead and save this guy, I'm going to dive back into Unity here. We're going to play the game. And you should see now, if I increase current health, you'll see up to 30. It goes exactly where we want it to here. And then if I increase, you'll see that it smoothly continues along for the rest of the bar. Now, our code currently works okay because of certain features inside of Unity. Specifically, that fill amount is restricted between 0 and 1 here. But it's possible for us to get a fill amount of like -1, or to get a value that's higher than 1. And I don't know about you, but I think it's a good idea to be careful about these particular things rather than just leaving them off the wayside. Because again, extra fill for the most part right now, until you get above 30, you're going to get a negative number here. So I'm going to add in another function which will clamp certain values between different portions. So in our case here, I'm going to say extra fill is equal to mathf.clamp. Now the clamp function takes in 3 properties. First is the property that you want to check if it's between 2 values. In our case, it's going to be extra fill. And then the minimum value you want, which is 0, and the max value, which is going to be 1. Perfect. Likewise, I want to do the same exact thing with circle fill here. I'm going to say circle fill, and I'm going to say is equal to mathf.clamp, and then again I'm going to provide circle fill, the value, the minimum 0, and the max. Now we could put 1, but again we're only ever using up to circle fill amount, the 0.75. So I'm going to put in circle fill amount instead. And so now our code will optionally clamp to ensure that the fill value will never be negative or too far away from us. And so if we save the script now, we should be in a good place for you to be able to see and or tweak these values. So again here I'm increasing the current health, and it creates a smooth and exciting bar. And so with this, there's a lot of other things that you can potentially do with it, but I hope that this gives you a good idea of how to approach this concept, and give you some ideas for when you're working on your own projects in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.